So we're going to continue with chapters 4 through 7 today. Where we last left off, Leo was following Stargirl across the desert. He just couldn't figure out what she was. Who is this girl? So, chapter 4. At Micah Area High School, Hillary Kimball was famous for 3 things: her mouth, the hoax, and Wayne Parr. Her mouth spoke for itself, most often to complain. The episode that became known as Hillary's hoax took place in her sophomore year, when she tried out for cheerleading. Her face and hair and figure were right enough, and she surely had the mouth. She made the squad easily. And then she stunned everyone by turning it down. She said she had no intention, or she said she had just wanted to prove that she could do it. She said she had no intention of yammering and bouncing in front of an empty bleachers, which was usually the case. And anyway, she hated sports. As for Wayne Parr, he was her boyfriend. Mouth-wise, he was her opposite. He seldom opened his. He didn't have to. All he had to do was appear. That was his job, appear. By both girls' and boys' standards, Wayne Parr was gorgeous. But he was more and less than that. In terms of achievement, Wayne Parr seemed to be a nobody. He played on no sports team, joined no organization, won no awards, earned no A's. He was elected to nothing, honored for nothing, and yet, though I did not realize this until years later, he was Grand Marshal of our daily parade. We did not wake up in the morning and ask ourselves, what will Wayne Parr wear today, or how will Wayne Parr act today? At least not consciously. But on some level, below awareness, this is exactly what we did. Wayne Parr did not go to football and basketball games, and by and large, neither did we. Wayne Parr did not ask questions in class or get worked up over teachers or pep rallies, and neither did we. Wayne Parr did not much care, neither did we. Did Parr create us, or was he simply a reflection of us? I didn't know. I knew only that if you peeled off one by one all the layers of the student body, you would have found at the core not the spirit of the school, but Wayne Parr. That's why in our sophomore year, I had recruited Parr for the hot seat. Kevin was surprised. Why him? Kevin said. What has he ever done? What could I say? That Parr was a worthy subject precisely because he did nothing? Because he was so monumentally good at nothing? I had only a vague insight, not the words. I just shrugged. The highlight of that hot seat came when Kevin asked Parr, who was his hero, his role model. It was one of Kevin's standard questions. Parr answered, GQ. In the control room, I did a double take. Was the sound working right? GQ? Kevin repeated dumbly. Gentleman's Quarterly? The magazine? Parr did not look at Kevin. He looked straight at the camera. He nodded smugly. He went on to say he wanted to become a male model. His ultimate ambition was to be on the cover of GQ. And right there he posed for the camera. He had that disdainful model look down pat, and suddenly I could see it. The jaw square is the corner of a cover. The chiseled cheeks, the perfect teeth and hair. That, as I say, took place toward the end of our sophomore year. I thought then that Wayne Parr would always reign as our Grand Marshal. How could I have known that he would soon be challenged by a freckled-nosed homeschooler? The call came from Kevin on a Friday night. He was at the football game. Quick, hurry, drop whatever you're doing now. Kevin was one of the few who went to the games. The school kept threatening to drop football because of the low attendance. They said ticket receipts were barely enough to pay for electricity to light the field. But Kevin was screaming on the phone. I jumped in the family pickup and raced to the stadium. I bolted from the truck. Kevin was at the gate, windmilling his arm. Hurry! I threw the $2 admission at the ticket window and we raced for the field. See better up here, he said, yanking me into the stands. It was halftime. The band was on the field, all 14 of them. It was halftime. Oops, sorry. Among the students, it was known as the world's smallest standing band. There weren't enough for them to form recognizable letters or shapes, except for a capital I. So they didn't march much at halftime of games. They mostly stood, in 2 rows of 7 each, plus the student conductor. No majorettes, no color guard, no flag, and rifle girls. Except this night. This night, Stargirl Caraway was on the field with them. As they played, rooted in their places, she pranced around the grass in her bare feet in a long lemon-yellow dress. She roamed from goalpost to goalpost. She swirled like a dust devil. She marched stiffly like a wooden soldier. She tootled an imaginary flute. She pogoed into the air and knocked her bare heels together. The cheerleaders gaped from the sidelines. A few people in the stands whistled. The rest, they barely outnumbered the band, sat there with a "what's this" on their faces. The band stopped playing and marched off the field. Stargirl stayed. She was twirling down the 40-yard line when the players returned. They did a minute of warm-up exercises, and she joined in, jumping jacks, belly whomps. The teams lined up for the second half kickoff. The ball perched on the kicking tee. She was still on the field. The referee blew his whistle and pointed to her. He flapped his hand for her to go away. Instead, she dashed for the ball. She plucked it off the tee and danced with it, spinning and hugging and hoisting it into the air. The players looked at their coaches. The coaches looked at the officials. The officials blew their whistles and began converging on her. The sole policeman on duty headed for the field. She punted the ball over the visiting team's bench and ran from the field and out of the stadium. Everyone cheered. The spectators, the cheerleaders, the band, the players, the officials, the parents running the hot dog stand, the policemen, me. We whistled and stomped our feet in the aluminum bleachers. The cheerleaders stared up in delighted surprise. For the first time, they were hearing something come back from the stands. They did cartwheels and backflips and even a 3-tiered pyramid. Old-timers, or as old as timers got in the city as young as Micah, said they had never heard such a racket. For the next home game, more than 1,000 people showed up, everyone but Wayne Parr and Hillary Kimball. There was a line at the ticket window. The refreshment stand ran out of hot dogs. A second policeman was called in. The cheerleaders were in their glory. They screamed up at the bleachers, "Give me an E!" The bleachers screamed back, "E!" We were the electrons, in honor of the town's electronics heritage. The cheerleaders ran through all their routines before the first quarter was over. The band was loud and peppy. The football team even scored a touchdown. In the stands, heads kept swinging to the edges of the field, to the entrance, the street lamp-lighted darkness behind the stadium. The sense of expectation grew as the first half came to a close. The band marched smartly onto the field. Even they were looking around. The musicians did their program. They even formed a small, lopsided circle. They seemed to linger on the field, drawling out their notes, waiting. Finally, reluctantly, they marched to the sideline. The players returned. They kept glancing around as they did their warm-ups. When the referee raised his arms and blew his whistle for the second half to begin, a sense of disappointment fell over the stadium. The cheerleader's shoulders sagged. She wasn't coming. On the following Monday, we got a shock in the lunchroom. Bleached, blonde, and beautiful Mallory Stillwell, captain of the cheerleaders, was sitting with Stargirl. She sat with her, ate with her, talked with her, walked out with her. By sixth period, the whole school knew. Stargirl had been invited to become a cheerleader and said yes. People in Phoenix must have heard us buzzing. Would she wear the usual skirt and sweater like everyone else? Would she do the usual cheers? Did all the cheerleaders want this, or was it just the captain's idea? Were they jealous? Cheerleading practice drew a crowd. At least 100 of us stood by the parking lot that day, watching her learn the cheers, watching her jump around in her long pioneer dress. She spent 2 weeks practicing. Halfway through the second week, she wore her uniform. Green-trimmed white V-neck cotton sweater, short green and white pleated skirt. She looked just like the rest of them. Still, to us, she was not truly a cheerleader, but Stargirl dressed like one. She continued to strum her ukulele and sing happy birthday to people. She still wore long skirts on non-game days and made a home of her school desks. When Halloween arrived, everyone in her homeroom found a candy pumpkin on his or her desk. No one had to ask who did it. By then, most of us had decided that we liked having her around. We found ourselves looking forward to coming to school, to seeing what bizarre antics she'd be up to. She gave us something to talk about. She was entertaining. At the same time, we held back because she was different. Different. We had no one to compare her to, no one to measure her against. She was unknown territory, unsafe. We were afraid to get too close. Also, I think we were waiting to see the outcome of an event that loomed larger and larger with every passing day. The next birthday coming up was Hillary Kimball's. Chapter 6. Hillary herself set up the stage the day before. In the middle of lunch, she got up from her table and walked over to Stargirl. For half a minute, she just stood behind Stargirl's chair. Silence everywhere except for tinklings in the kitchen. Only Stargirl was still chewing. Hillary moved around to the side. "I'm Hillary Kimball," she said. Stargirl looked up and she smiled. She said, "I know. My birthday's tomorrow." "I know." Hillary paused, her eyes narrowed. She jabbed a finger in Stargirl's face. "Don't try singing to me. I'm warning you." Only those at nearby tables heard Stargirl's faint reply. "I won't sing to you." Hillary gave a satisfied smirk and walked off. From the moment we arrived at school the next day, the atmosphere bristled like cactus cat paddles. When the buzzer sounded for the first lunch, we leaped for the doors. We swarmed into the food lines. We raced through our choices and hurried to our seats. Never had we moved so fast, so quietly. At most, we whispered. We sat, we ate. We were afraid to crunch our potato chips, afraid we might miss something. Hillary was the first to enter. She marched in leading her girlfriends like an invading general. In the food line, she smacked items onto her tray. She glared at the cashier while her friends scanned the crowd for Stargirl. Hillary stared ferociously at her sandwich. Wayne Parr came in and sat several tables away as if even he was afraid of her on this day. Stargirl finally came in. She went straight to the food line, blithely smiling as usual. Both she and Hillary seemed unaware of each other. Stargirl ate. Hillary ate. We watched. Only the clock moved. A kitchen staffer stuck her head out over the conveyor belt and called, "Trace!" A voice barked back, "Shut up!" Stargirl finished her lunch. As usual, she stuffed her wrappings into her paper bag, carried the bag to the paper-only can by the tray return window, and dropped it in. She returned to her seat. She picked up the ukulele. We stopped breathing. Hillary stared at her stomach. Stargirl began strumming and humming. She stood. She strolled between the tables, humming and strumming. 300 pairs of eyes followed her. She came to Hillary Kimball's table and kept on walking, right up to the table where Kevin and I sat with the hot seat crew. She stopped and sang happy birthday. It was Hillary's name at the end of the song, but true to her word of the day before, she did not sing it to Hillary. She sang it to me. She stood at my shoulder and looked down at me, smiling and singing. I didn't know whether to look down at my hands or up at her face, so I did some of each, my face burning. When she finished, the students burst from their silence with wild applause. Hillary Kimball stomped from the lunchroom. Kevin looked up at Stargirl and pointed at me and said what everyone must have been thinking. "Why him?" Stargirl tilted her head as if studying me. She grinned mischievously. She tugged on my earlobe and said, "He's cute," and walked off. I was feeling 9 ways at once, and they all ended up at the touch of her hand on my ear, until Kevin reached over and yanked on the same earlobe. "This keeps getting more interesting," he said. "I think it's time to go see Archie." And that ends chapter 6.